The things that you earn in life give you a very different sense of pleasure than the things that you inherit in life. Before you jump to the next video that's not going to add any value to your life, I want you to answer this question to yourself. How often do I suffer from depression, hopelessness, self-pity, or even identity crisis? Think about that. If the answer is more than once a week, you definitely want to tune in and go all the way to the end, because I tell you, you will not find anything like this anywhere on the internet. Let's get started. Before I dive into the mechanism of comparison, I want you to reflect on something real quick. From the beginning of human history up to the invention of television, the experience of life used to be very different and the knowledge was very different. But with the invention of television, we got a peek inside the lives of the very select few, especially with reality TVs and things like that, that create their own classification of addiction amongst a lot of people that I've worked with or came across. Then you have the invention of the internet, and more importantly, social media. It is not a secret that the misuse of social media is responsible for the sheer number of mental health issues we're facing as a society. And one of the biggest contributing factors to these modern age mental illnesses is comparison. Comparison, just like everything else, has a good side and it has a bad side. When you take the bad side, negative comparison to others equals suicide of self-worth. When you take the good side, you get
positive comparison to others equals prosperous manifestation of fulfillment.
You know, these days you can't go down the street without hearing or seeing something related to income inequality. In many countries, people are becoming more aware about not just income inequality, but also racial inequalities. And there are so many other types of inequalities that also exist. However, it seems to me that not a lot of people are aware of the mental inequalities that exist inside of every one of our minds and programmed in our subconscious as a result of our inherited environment. That's why there is a gap that exists between someone who thinks like this and someone who thinks like this. I'm going to share with you the 4 types of comparisons that exist and how you can scan your subconscious to detect the destructive ones and also replace them with the positive ones that generate a much more fulfilling experience of reality. Let's get started. Guys, this universal equation right here is the most conscientiousness approach to comparison. If you're truly able to understand this right here and incorporate it in your life, you will rid yourself from the burden of negative comparisons and build yourself as a result of positive ones. So here's what happens. Every single individual has a personal identity that is a construct of 2 major components: their inherited circumstances plus their conscious progress. So what do we mean by inherited circumstances? Everybody is born into a family. For some people, that family is a loving, supportive family. For others, it's a family of divorce, it's a family of turmoil or domestic abuse. Then you have your place of growth. This is where you grew up. This is the neighborhood you grew up. If you happen to grew up in Del Mar, California, compared to someone who is living in the middle of the desert in Uganda, you have a very different experience of childhood. Everything from your hobbies to your social circles to your school, everything is different based on this little factor right here. Then you have finances. You have someone who is born into generational wealth. The type of wealth where they can not lift a finger their entire life and all of their life expenses are taken care of. Compared to someone else that is born into absolute poverty. These examples of inherited circumstances keep going and going, and I'm sure you can come up with dozens of other ones. However, these are the ones you, I, or anybody else cannot do anything to change. You cannot do anything about the fact that you have the skin color that you have. You have the eye color that you have. You have the height that you have. All of these stuff are inherited. And then there's the part that you can take control yourself and implement change if you so desire to, when it comes to the matters of conscious progress. These are things like self-esteem, education, communication, fitness, these are not the kind of things that you can inherit. These are the type of things that you have to go and earn yourself. So when it comes down to becoming a more confident person, becoming a more skillful and capable person, becoming someone who is a rock star in going about their daily lives with their interactions and the way they win over people, the way they get what they want out of life, the way they care about their bodies, the way they watch what they eat, the way they're conscious of how much exercise they're getting, and the list goes on and on and on and on. What are you focusing on when you're comparing yourself to somebody else? I know so many kids in third world countries that are absolutely devastated by the effects of looking on their Instagram, seeing all these 18-year-olds, late teenagers, soon to be adults, that are roaming around all sorts of affluential neighborhoods, driving around these expensive cars that their dads bought for them, or trying to floss all sorts of things that was not earned by them, but rather inherited as a result of their circumstances. And those kids in third world countries are sitting there devastated, asking themselves, why do I not deserve to have something like that? Why is it that I can't have something like that? What did I do less to be less deserving of something like that? Do you see how you have two different paths ahead of you? These two are considered the macro components of self-identity. However, there are thousands and thousands of micro components that goes into each one of these. Next time you're going to compare yourself to someone else, don't just look at a single picture and decide that that person has a better life than you because they have inherited something that you consider to be a dream of yours, that you consider something worthy of attaining. The things that you earn in life give you a very different sense of pleasure than the things that you inherit in life. I can tell you this from my own experience. There are two different levels of appreciation when it comes down to something that is handed to you. Here you go, son, go drive a $200,000 car. Compared to you driving a clunky car that was manufactured before you were born for a few years before you get to drive that amazing sports car. Your relationship with that vehicle is very different. Your sense of appreciation is very different. If you're someone who cherishes traveling and you always look up different destinations and you tell yourself, oh man, one day I'm going to go there, one day I'm going to see this, you will have a very different experience the day you get to go visit that place compared to another kid whose dad hands him a credit card, says, go wherever you want to go. Yeah, sure, you're a teenager, get on first class. Those experiences carry two very different emotions. And if you ever talk to people who earn their way up, they will tell you about how they're so happy they didn't inherit those things. Even though it might have put them ahead in life, they're so happy they didn't inherit it because they knew they would not receive the same level of joy. So next time, when you're in this situation, if you find yourself comparing to someone else, make sure you do a quick analysis on what category does the fact of comparison fall under. Is it a micro component of inherited circumstances, or is it a micro component of conscious progress? Idolize the things that could be earned, not the things that could be inherited. And you will find yourself in a generous state of motivation. But now let's get on with the 4 different types of comparison and how it can make you or break you. All right, you guys, you made it to the last and most important part of this video. The difference between people who continuously manifest better things in life, people who are a source of influence, inspiration, and uplifting for those around them, and those who are drowning in a cocktail of depression, sadness, fear of missing out, and also those who are suffering from their shadow side. For those of you who might have taken a look at Jungian psychology, where he talks about the psychology of the unconscious and the depth of the shadow and how it manifests itself in our day-to-day life, how we can become aware of it and incorporate it properly into our lives. This is where it all comes together. See, for the person who makes a comparison in a positive up way, this person sees a fancy car zoom by him at a traffic stop and tell himself, oh man, that looks like a nice car. I'm gonna have something like that someday. Or someone who sees an amazing family, maybe a friend of yours that has a really good wife, beautiful, amazing kids, and you look at him and be like, man, I'm gonna create a family like that one day for myself. And then you have, on the negative up, you have people who look up to those people and say, damn you, why do you have it and why do I not? Damn you, why are you worthy of that and I'm not? Do you see how these people will have two very different experiences of reality encountering the exact same thing? Well, the same thing exists over here. You have people who look at those who are beneath them, particularly in one subject, whether it's wealth, health, diet, physical well-being, emotional well-being, whatever you want to call it. They immediately feel a sensation of humbleness, humility, and modesty. They reach a hand out and they try their best to pull that person up and say, I recognize where you are. I were where you were just a couple years ago. I know how I can pull you out of this. There is enough for everybody. We live in abundance. Let me show you how. And then over here, you have the bullies. You have the trollers. You have the haters. The people who get angry. The people who look at others who are beneath them and say, oh, you are a petty peasant, or you don't belong in my class. This is the kind of reaction you would get if you were driving a clunky car in an upscale neighborhood somewhere in California. Well, you would get the rolling eyes of, what the fuck are you doing here? You don't belong here. And guess what? The people who made their own fortune, the people who earned what you might consider as something worthy of jealousy, envy, inspiration, those people don't possess this kind of attitude. Those people possess this kind of attitude. They're always looking for opportunities to help other people out. So the way you go about processing this information of comparison that is going through your head, whether it's any one of these, for the most part, it's a reflection of your subconscious programming. And if you're able to understand that, you have the opportunity to hone and tone that approach to something that serves you more. So next time you see someone zoom by a fancy car, next time you're rolling down a neighborhood and you see someone who lives in a fancy house, or you encounter anything that makes you feel like, oh man, that must be nice. Ask yourself, am I attracting that thing or am I repelling it? Because how could you hate a nice car and be able to have it one day? How can you hate somebody having a good family? It won't happen unless you take constructive approaches to comparison. For those of you who want to gain a deeper understanding of your subconscious programming, I have recently put up an ebook I finished, The Illusion of I, from the victim of circumstances to a self-designed experience of life. You will gain a fundamental understanding of what it is to become an observant of your own subconscious programming and understand all the elements, the components that form this equation of your self-identity. Only when you are aware of what kind of mechanisms you're operating based off of is when you can tune them, is when you can change them for something better. Remember this, the victims of domestic abuse do not necessarily know they're being abused. They don't know they're being abused until they're able to see outside of that experience of reality. Until they encounter people who tell them, oh, that is not normal. The same thing exists for a lot of us. We are continuously going about our days, day in and day out, not really thinking about a lot of things that are programmed in us from an early childhood. And this is right about time where you can take a look at those things and make a difference. If you encounter any problems, if you have questions, if you want to know more, if you run into a gridlock, reach out to me, message me. I will promise you I won't hold back. Catch you next time, guys.